Welcome to the apex of sports ownership, the Apex Athletic Collective.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 37 of Instigate Success, building an ABA franchise. I'm your host, Jake Schoen. I'm here again. We're in the off season, so a little bit less news as far as our instigators and the AAC. But we still have our show. We're still going to continue to put out content throughout the off season. That way, all of our subscribers and supporters here on Patreon, as well as everywhere else, have a chance to catch up with us and kind of get some insight on what we're looking for. Again, we're always here on Patreon Fridays at 9. And we'll jump into this week's show. So we did have a showdown this past weekend between some of our friends and foes in the Central region. That first game, the first matchup was between the Pit Bulls and the Lions, and it turns out that the cats are better than dogs in that circumstance. 122 to 117, very close game. Um, and I'll be honest, I did not have a chance to catch that game. I did wind up watching the game on Sunday from last week, though, so I'll be able to give a little bit more insight on that game. However, for the Pit Bulls and the Lions, that game was a pretty close 5-point game. Looking at the final score, and again, this was hosted in Danville, Indiana, at the Lions venue, and it was for the Central Region Championship. So we had a couple of games on Saturday and a final game on Sunday to decide who will represent the Central Division in the championship for the ABA. And that is the division, or that's the region in which the Instigators are in. The Lions were the winner of our division. They represented us in the playoffs here. So they were able to continue to move on and represent the red division in the central region. The other game on Saturday was between the Burning River Buckets and Chicago Fury. That game was a little bit more decidedly in favor of the Fury. That wound up being about a 27-point victory for the Fury. And that led to the matchup between the Fury and the Lions on Sunday. Again, still playing at the same venue. And that was hosted. And we'll take a look at the bracket here. Again, the Lions have been pretty much on top of the playoffs and creating these graphics and brackets. So that is where I got these brackets straight from the Lions, and that is why you'll see some of their branding on here as well. But they were the team representing our division in the regional championship here for the Central region, close to the close to home actually for the Instigators, being that this was held in Danville, Indiana, only a couple of hours away. And you see there the first two games held on Saturday, and then the final on Sunday. That led to the matchup this past Sunday between the Fury and the Lions. And if you had a chance to catch that game live, definitely didn't start out how I expected. And the Fury got off to a very hot start, and they were out in front at half by a significant margin. And it just proved to be a little bit too much for the Lions to come back from. Throughout the game, they kept trying to get closer and closer, and they were able to knock down the margin a bit. Um, However, when it came down to the wire, it just was not enough for the Lions. And we'll see that final score wound up being 102-80. So a pretty significant victory there in favor of the Chicago Fury. Um, Again, if you had a chance to catch that game, they were streaming it live on the Lions YouTube, and it's still up there if you wanted to catch a replay of it. But the Fury got out to a hot start, and they put the Lions down big in the first half, and the Lions just were not able to come back at all from that. Pretty much, they clawed back a little bit, especially in the fourth quarter. They put up a little bit more points, but that margin just kept to the point where the Fury really didn't have to um, worry about the threat of the Lions making a comeback. They kept their foot on the pedal and pretty much just blew the Lions out in this game. So congratulations to the Fury. That is a huge accomplishment, taking out the defending co-champion Indiana Lions this past weekend. They will be progressing to represent the Central region as a whole on, I believe, April 19th and 20th, that weekend, down in Alabama, a lot closer to where I am. And they'll be able to represent the um, the whole central region, which is fun for them. And hopefully they can do the central region proud. And if I'm pulling for a team, it's going to be that one. To have bragging rights when it comes to the central region being the best region in the ABA with over 150 teams. Currently in the ABA, there are regions, and they're broken into divisions within the regions. So we have the Central region, the uh, East region, the West region, and the South region. So four major regions within the ABA. And once there's a champion from each of those regions, they come down to Alabama and meet April 19th and 20th for the finale. And we can see, so I did some digging throughout the league because it's to be quite honest, the ABA, there's so many teams in the league that it's a little bit difficult to keep up with every team. So I've kept up with our division throughout the season, starting to learn about more of the teams throughout the region this past weekend, and now it'll expand to teams with throughout the whole entire ABA as we try to scout some teams for the championship game here. So did some digging to see who is still left in the playoffs overall for the whole entire ABA, and I was able to find out some of that through the website and the My Player stats as well. Looking through the recent games and seeing who won, those games wound up leading to find out the regional final for the West is this weekend, Saturday, tomorrow actually. It's going to be a late game for that 7:30 p.m. Again, I think that's going to be in the West Coast, so that would be in their time zone, which is going to be a lot closer to like 10:30 p.m. for us on the East Coast. But I got this here. It looks like it's the New Mexico Bull Snakes and the Silicon Valley Panthers. I'll be honest, like I said, I have not done a ton of research on these teams, but we're gonna do a little bit more research throughout the season here, or the I guess the season. Yeah, there's only this week and a couple more weeks coming up before April 20th. And just looking at the rankings within the division, we can pull like a quick number here for their record, and it would be in the West. So we have the New Mexico Bull Snakes. It looks like they only have, according to the My Stats Online portal, an 8-3 record. So looks like they may not have all their games recorded here, or they just had the chance to play as many games as some of these other teams throughout the season. And the Silicon Valley Panthers, they are 13-1. So I would have to take a guess here and say that the Panthers are going to be the favorite in that game coming up tomorrow night. And if we look back at the games prior, the last week, The Bull Snakes took down the Las Vegas Royals. That was a 128 to 123 victory, so pretty close there, 5-point victory. And the Silicon Valley Panthers took down Team Trouble 111 to 101. Again, those are pretty close victories there for both teams within 10 points against their respective opponents. So that'll be a fun matchup to see tomorrow night. We'll have one more piece of that puzzle figured out as far as who is going to represent the Western region in the ABA championship. Then we go to the East Coast, and East Coast is a little bit different compared to the other divisions. So the Central has their champion already crowned. The West has their champion crowned tomorrow night, or maybe early morning hours for us East Coast people on Sunday. But the East actually has your it's not the final game here for the East. They still have another round of games. They're in the Sweet 16, as they call it. So it's between a couple of games here. The Wyoming Valley Clutch will take on the Binghamton Bulldogs. That game is tomorrow. Again, a late tip off there, 7 o'clock or so. And that game will be one of the games for the Eastern Division or Eastern Conference region. I'm sorry, Eastern region for the ABA, deciding the champion. And they'll face off another team here from the East as well. And I just want to make a note here. I have followed the East a little bit more. I do know there's a team around my area where I was from, the Central PA Kings, if I remember the name correctly. I do believe that is their name. Let me double check that. But yeah, Central PA Kings, they had a pretty good season this year as well. And I also kept an eye on the Eastern region because I saw that one of the players that was on the Syracuse basketball team while I was attending school actually joined one of the ABA teams up there. He was on the Buffalo Extreme. That player was Howard Washington. So he actually was the same year as me in college. So I kind of kept an eye on that to see how he did when it came to the ABA. But the Binghamton Bulldogs were actually able to knock off his team this past weekend, the Buffalo Extreme, by a pretty significant margin as well, 106 to 87 in their game. And the Wyoming Valley Clutch, they were also able to get a pretty significant victory as well, 130 to 113 against Philly Thunder. And looking at the records on the regular season, this is going to be a really good matchup here. The Binghamton Bulldogs, and I know there's definitely a difference between Buffalo and Binghamton. Lived in upstate New York when I was going to Syracuse, so there's definitely a difference there. Binghamton is 19-4 on the season, so a lot of games for them on their record. Very impressive record as well. And the Wyoming Valley Clutch, they are 16-2 on this season. Again, a very impressive record for both of those teams. That is going to be one of my favorite matchups this weekend to see who winds up coming out with the victory. Again, that'll be another piece of the puzzle as we go throughout the championship here, and that'll be decided tomorrow night. The other game, it looks like, is going to be the following weekend for the Eastern region. That is going to be between the Providence Pirates and the Thunder. Let me see. I don't remember the city. I believe it was somewhere in New York for the Thunder. Coney Island. So it's a Coney Island Thunder. Coney Island Thunder and Providence Pirates. They face off not this weekend, but the following weekend. And that'll be the other game for the Eastern region. So that piece won't be solved until next weekend. Again, we still have a couple of weeks before we get to the actual championship weekend down in Alabama. That is going to be the 19th and 20th of April. And that will be another good game as well. We'll preview that again next week's episode of Instigate Success. But the Coney Island Thunder are 18-6 on the season. Again, a very impressive record with a lot of games played. And their most recent game, they were able to secure a victory 104-93 against the Garden State Warriors. And the Providence Pirates, they are 18-1. So that's a very, very impressive record for them. They may have the best record of a team left in the tournament here. I believe that is going to be the most wins with only a single loss, as far as I can see, on the official records, according to my stats online. So that is going to be a very good game as well. And then the winner of that game, again, they will match up against the winner of the previous game that we showed, the Clutch and the Bulldogs. And that winner will face off against the winner of the Pirates and the Thunder. So East still has a lot of competitive teams still in the competition, uh, trying to find a way to be the single team left for the East as a representative once they travel down to Alabama. And the South is the last piece of that puzzle. So the South, it looks like they have their representative already. The Southern region champions are the Mississippi Silverbacks. Again, I looked them up, and looks like they will be representing the South here on the season. It looks like they defeated the Nassau Pride 117-108 to win the Southern region. They had a similar setup as far as the weekend for the championship in their region as ours did, the Central region. Both of those were decided this past weekend. I think that's honestly a little bit beneficial for both of those teams. Gives them a little bit more time to have some rest. But you always have that question of rest versus rust. So they will have, what it would be, two full weeks. Well, actually three if you count this weekend. So it'll be 3 full weeks of rest. So that is on the border of that rest versus rust. Maybe this weekend would have been a nice weekend to end it, but it is the holiday weekend, so that also throws a curve in that as well for some teams. But the Mississippi Silverback, they are representing the South. And if we take a look back at their bracket from this weekend, I don't have the graphics here for it. Again, I am just pulling from the stats based off of what was posted, both on the ABA stats as well as the My Stats Online. But it looks like Nassau Pride took down the Western Oklahoma Bulldogs on Saturday, 120-115, and the Silverbacks took down the Atlanta Aliens 118-115 on Saturday, which led to that matchup on Sunday, where the Silverbacks were able to prevail over the Pride. So that sets it up, and you can see there they have the Final Four, and so that'll be the semifinals and the finals for the ABA championship overall is going to be in Mobile, Alabama, the 19th and the 20th. So that is a Friday. So let's see, maybe there's 420. You got a chance to go out to Alabama, and you can see the actual championship game for the ABA. And they got the location there, Spring Hill College. So I'll have to look that up again as we go into the next week or so. We still got a couple weeks actually before the 20th. So It looks like the Silverbacks also have a special guest. I pulled this from their socials. So Fly Rich Double. Um, Not familiar with him, but that's pretty cool that they are both in the championship weekend, and they've got a special guest already invited out for that. And they're in the South, so it kind of is the closest. That will be the closest geographical team to the championship. So they will have to defend their home ground when it comes to that. But we have two pieces of the puzzle figured out. The other half is still being decided. So we know the Chicago Fury and the Mississippi Silverbacks will be in the championship weekend. As far as the East and the West, there are still a handful of games to be played out before the champion of each of those regions is crowned. So that'll be an interesting thing to keep an eye on. We'll keep you updated on that here on Instigate Success next week, as well as the following week, as the regions are finalized and each teams have their champions. Also happening on April 20th on 420, there is a big vote going on currently for fan controlled. Again, we have mentioned fan controlled sports and entertainment here in the past several times. And they've got a big vote here for the 420 Talladega race. You can vote right now for your driver of the fan controlled car. They are going to be driving the number 14 SS Greenlight Chevrolet. And it's between JJ Yeley and Mason Massey. Again, I am a huge JJ Yeley fan. So if you can throw your votes in on the app, again, you can go to fcse.xyz and it'll get you a link to download the app. And they have it for both Android and Apple products. But definitely get your votes in for JJ, as many as you can get in there. The vote, I believe, is open until the end of the month, but really would appreciate any votes that you can put for JJ. He had a chance to represent the team as the fan controlled driver last time, and they did it the first time in Phoenix. If you remember, I actually had my face on that car. My face is not going to be on this car, but I had an amazing experience out there. I had a chance to meet him as well, and he's a great dude. I've always been a fan of his, so I'd really appreciate any votes that we can get in his favor. Again, the votes are going to be going through the end of the month, and I believe the vote is going to be daily as well. But you can download that app and get your picks in for your driver of the fan controlled car for that Talladega race. Um, but that'll be a fun opportunity to see what happens again with the fan control car. Last time in Phoenix did not happen to be the best result. JJ Yeley was spun and wrecked by Chris Hacker, and that ended his day. I was at that race. I had great experience and was on the pit box, and the car wrecked, and I saw the hood buckle up, and he pulled into the pit, and when he pulled in the pit, you could tell that car was pretty much completely broken at that point. He couldn't really steer it anymore, and it crashed into the pit box. But the cool thing about that was my face got on TV. So if you watch the highlights of that race, specifically on that crash, you'll see the hood buckle up, and one of the flaps actually had my face on it. So that was a pretty cool experience, and that is something that I'll definitely remember, and would love to have him represent the team again and see what he can do this time. Talladega is a super speedway, so a lot fast racing and a lot more drafting. That type of track does seem to fit his style of racing a lot better. And I think he would do pretty well if he has the opportunity to represent the fan control car this time coming up. Um, as always, there is March Madness still going on. We're getting closer to the final rounds of March Madness. Actually, the one game just wrapped up. I've had that on my phone here over to the side, so that might have been why I've been glancing over a couple times. NC State, the Cinderella story so far in this year's tournament, they just took down Marquette. That's a pretty impressive win there, 67-58. They got out in front. They were able to hold on to that lead. NC State, if you watched them throughout the regular season, was not really a team that you would have thought would make this kind of run. Again, I'm a Syracuse fan. I'm a Syracuse grad, and so I know the ACC. I've watched the ACC throughout the season, and it's definitely not the team that I would have picked out of the ACC to say that they are going to be the best team and represent them. But they have been on a crazy run throughout the ACC tournament, and they've just been able to carry that over to the March Madness tournament as well. But it's a fun team to watch. I mean, it really is. If I had to pick a team left in the tournament that I would want to watch win, watch at all. I mean, win is cool, but that would be the team. I love the style of play they have, the physicality, and obviously, I think the sweetheart of the tournament so far has been DJ Burns Jr., the big man for NC State. He plays a very physical style of basketball, reminiscent of the older style and older days of basketball. I've seen a lot of comparisons to like Zach Randolph, and that is very similar to his play style. Big man, but he is able to make some pretty impressive passes, and he bodies his way as well into the basket. And he's not bodying his way to throw up dunks, but he is hitting some pretty impressive like contested layups, and a couple of times he'll hit some mid-range shots as well. They are well, they just won, so they're moving on to the next round. I believe that would be this weekend. Continues. Let's see. So they'll be in the Elite Eight, and they'll be facing off against the winner of the Houston and Duke game later tonight. So that'll be pretty cool because Duke is the last team other than NC State now left in the ACC. Oh, that's not true. Clemson actually won last night as well. So Clemson and NC State, not the two teams I would have picked to represent the ACC throughout the season. Obviously, I think the default picks every year is going to be Duke and North Carolina, UNC. But UNC was knocked off last night in a close game between Alabama and North Carolina. Alabama came back and were able to pull off that victory. There's a lot of back and forth, but Alabama wound up pulling off that victory by 2 points. And I know, I seen it floating around on social. There was a missed dunk at one point in that game by UNC. So that missed dunk essentially is the difference in that game. Um, there's runs and stuff and momentum and whatever that carries over. So I'm not going to say that that single dunk is actually what lost the game. But when you break it down in a purely number way and play way, that is, you can break it down to one single bucket and you could say that's what lost them the game. But I think had they made that, it would have been a little bit different, anyways. And so they'll face off against Clemson. So Alabama will go off against Clemson. That's one of the Elite Eight games. I believe that is the only game that that one and the UConn Illinois game. Those are the two games that have been decided so far. UConn had again very impressive throughout this tournament, as they have been throughout the season. Um, 30-point victory against San Diego State. Um, Really, they haven't had much of a challenge so far, but they are going to be up against Illinois in the next round, which is, I believe, tomorrow. Yeah, so that'll be tomorrow. So both of those games will be tomorrow night to decide the final four. And then the other games, the ones that are being played tonight, the winners of those games that will face off against each other on Sunday. So that'll break down a good portion of the bracket, and you'll have your Final Four going into the month of April. Um, but that Illinois team, they were able to beat a pretty impressive Iowa State team. That Iowa State team kind of manhandled the um, Houston team in the Big Ten championship game. So going into the tournament, I thought that they would carry some of that momentum into. And as is tradition, it seems like the headphones timed out or whatever. But the Iowa State team, they were carrying a lot of momentum going into this tournament. So I thought that they would carry some of that over. And I definitely thought they had a legitimate shot at going against UConn. I don't think any of the brackets I had, though, that I had UConn falling before the Final Four. I think that they are pretty impressive. That UConn team is going to be, I think, the team to beat, and everybody has that listed currently. I think for that. But the other game we got going on now is the Gonzaga Purdue game. That is close to wrapping up, but I didn't really watch that game because I was keeping an eye on the NC State game. But it looks like Purdue's got a pretty significant margin right now, 16 points with under 3 minutes to go. I would say that they are um, fairly certain to move on to the next round if I had to take a guess. And they will face off against the winner of the Creighton Tennessee game. So that game will be up. Uh, that and the Duke and Houston game will be up around 10 o'clock. So those will be fun games to watch. My bracket, again, definitely busted. I think everybody's has been pretty much busted for a while. For my final four teams, I think they are pretty much shot other than um, UConn. I know is still in there. I had UConn winning, so that's still alive, but I think the rest of it is pretty much done. Well, let's see. So I'll pull that up. I still got Creighton up there. So Creighton, I did have in a Final Four as well. I had Dayton in there. Dayton lost, I think, in their second game, and Marquette. Marquette just lost to NC State. Um, so that will be interesting to keep an eye on and watch. March Madness is always fun to watch. But this is the last weekend of true March Madness because it is the last weekend of March. The rest of the tournament will take place in April. So it'll wrap up in the championship weekend in April. And let me see, I don't think that's the same weekend as the rest of everything else. Yeah, so that'll be the 6th and the 8th. So that is the next weekend. It is not the weekend of the 19th and the 20th, or I guess the 20th and 21st, but it is not the same weekend as the ABA championship or the fan controlled racing. So you have the March Madness to carry you over until those events, and then a very busy weekend on the 20th as far as that goes. But I'll definitely still be watching some of the games here later tonight and throughout the weekend. Um, but again, I like watching that NC State team. They are a fun team to watch in the tournament. I also mentioned Clemson pulled off a victory last night. Again, that is another player that was on Syracuse when I was at school. Joe Girard, the third, he is on Clemson now. So I always keep an eye on those Syracuse players. And actually, if you be honest, there's another Syracuse player there as well, Illinois. So that'll be a matchup to watch with the Illinois game. Quincy Guerrier, he also went to Syracuse. But I know like random guys. Throughout the tournament here because they went to Syracuse, and so I'll keep an eye on that. But he's more of like a bench player. Joe Girard still gets some pretty decent minutes as a starter for Clemson, though. But yeah, I'll be rooting for NC State again if I had to pick a team. I just like the way they play, and they seem hot right now. But I think UConn again is going to wind up coming away with the victory when it's all said and done and the championship game. But I think that is pretty much all the news that we had for this week. Um, but yeah, thank you for everybody for joining us again for Instigate Success. Again, we'll be continuing to do this throughout the off season. We're still working on getting some stuff up. We'll have votes throughout the off season for a lot of different things when it comes to the instigators. We have hopes to get up votes for decisions when it comes to roster management as well as team votes in general for the upcoming season, because that is the whole goal for the Apex Athletic Collective, the AAC, is to have the fan input as much as possible for the team ownership and control, basically. So we definitely are going to have some votes in the upcoming sometime in the upcoming off season, um, for you to have input on the team. Again, remember that is going to be limited to our subscribers on Patreon, and some of those votes will be limited to the fan voter role or higher on the Patreon tiers. So keep an eye out for that. Again, we're still working on that. Nothing has been launched quite yet, but yeah, that's pretty much it for all the news. And we'll be back again next week on Friday, as always, at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. But for all those who celebrate, happy Easter. Enjoy the weekend. Take some time to enjoy with family and friends. And, uh, just take some time to relax and enjoy yourselves. Watch some March Madness. Eat some good food, hopefully. And until then, be great and instigate. We'll see you guys next time.